So we're now here at the public hosted site, and I'm going to sign in with my SME demo account. Once signed in, you will see that we're welcomed. This is what's known as a widget editor. It's great for intranets. It allows admins to be able to give customized messages to end users. It's easily controlled, and you can add a number of different widgets such as RSS feeds of the corporate accounts, Twitter feeds, etc. And you can even design your own because this is just a JavaScript container. So I'm logged in as the cloud or IT admin, and the first thing I need to do is to add some storage to allow my users to be able to use it. So to do that, I can go to my dashboard and I can add a new, what we call a provider or connector. And in this case, I'm going to choose Softlayer. And then this will invoke a wizard, which I can follow. So I'll add my Softlayer authentication endpoint. And then I will add my Softlayer username. Once that's done, I'll validate it. And I can choose to change the default container name that is created. I will just make it SME IBM Demo. And we continue. And then the next thing that will occur is that SME will go away and it will index any storage that is already on the Softlayer system. In our case, this is a brand new storage instance, so there's nothing there, so we can see it completed very quickly. And as soon as that's added, it's available in the SME file manager on the web, and we can see it's now here. We'll also see that we've got an extra entry, which is where I'm managing my on-premise files. From the file manager, I can also move to a more hierarchical view in which there's some default folder names for special circumstances such as locked files or encrypted files or any contacts or email backups I may have made. These can be hidden if they're not required, but they're there by default. I can move back from the hierarchical view to the simple flat view. This can be controlled for all users. Remember, right now I'm operating in the team admin mode. And once here, I can decide about creating some shared folders that will allow my users to be able to work with the system. Before we start, let's take a look at the view that we see in Softlayer Direct. Right now, this is the Softlayer view. So I'm inside of the default container in London because that's the regional endpoint that I chose. And all I have right now here is the SME IBM demo container that we created earlier and no objects. And we'll take another look at this view once we've created some shared team folders and added some files. Right now though, we'll flip back to our file manager and we'll create some shared team folders. So we'll create a folder and we'll call it projects. And we'll create two more, one called marketing and one called HR. If we flick back to our Softlayer view and we do a refresh, we'll see that indeed those three folders have been created. Now we'll add some files to populate the folders that we created. And one of the ways you can do this is directly from the web view. I prefer to do it from the hierarchical view. You can simply navigate to your file system and you can drag the files across. It's pretty easy, pretty intuitive, and the files will, be uploaded in parallel one by one. Once the files have completed, they'll of course be available in the object store, but they won't be available to end users because by default shared team folders are permissive. So if you have added some users and you do start adding team folders, nobody will be able to get access to them until you create shared permissions. There are of course other ways to get files into your folders. We've looked at drag and drop onto the web, but one of the other ways of doing it is actually doing it through what we call the cloud drive. The SME Cloud Drive is a desktop integrated drive for Windows, Mac and Linux that we provide that really brings the object storage into the desktop for the end user. We often talk about delivering the last mile of object storage, and what that means is that object storage provides a great mechanism to fulfill the storage requirement, but getting it to the end user is often the difficult part. And the drives actually provide a great way of being able to do that. So they integrate directly in the desktop. To the end user, they just look like another home filer drive, and they can click on them and get access to data quite quickly. And the other great thing about them is that data isn't replicated down. It functions like a true network drive, so it brings the data down on demand. And when you're dealing with object storage, quite often you have very large amounts of data to the hundreds of gigabytes or terabytes or petabytes. So it's not really possible to work in the Dropbox sync mode when you're dealing with that sort of data. You need to be able to browse it and pull it down on demand. Having said that, SME does have a Dropbox sync-like tool as well, which users can map to certain amounts of that object storage to replicate and work with offline if they choose to. So to do this, we will be working with our Finder, which is similar to Windows Explorer on Windows. And we'll just take the files that we have here in project. We'll copy them, and then we'll move down to our storage drive. And as you see, it's got the same file layout that we see on the web. If we go to my Softlayer files and the container view, I will go straight into projects, and I'll simply paste the items in. And the files are delivered straight into the object storage directly from the user's desktop. Of course, the other way that we can get files into our system is by navigating to some of the other stores that we have already mapped. So I said earlier that I'd mapped on-premise files. I have a couple of white papers in there that really should be in the marketing folder. So I can simply select those, and I can drag them across to marketing, and they'll be moved directly from my Windows file share directly across to the marketing folder. And that's a great way to be able to move data around. And one of the things about the SME system is that everything you do is governed. So first of all, I can see that there is a task currently in place. That task is copying the data from my on-premise server across to my Softlayer object storage. It's 50% complete right now. And also, everything is audited and governed. So I can go to my audit logs, and I can see that in the SME system, everything that I've done, moving files from one place to another. So there's the two files I've just moved, and these are the uploads I processed earlier. Also with the IP address and the date. So I can export this as a CSV file or as an XLS file, and I can hand it off to a compliance officer. And also, as an admin, I can integrate this into my syslogs and expose it in a more holistic corporate BAM dashboard if I choose to do so. If I go back to my file manager now, and I go back into the folder we just looked at, which was the marketing folder, then what I'll see is that the marketing folder now contains a copy of those two documents that I've just moved across. So that was pretty easy. I moved it from my on-premise files directly onto the object storage. So once we have the information in the object storage, we can actually interact with it directly from this view. So we can preview the files pretty easily directly from the web browser. We can find out information about them, how many times they've been downloaded, any shared links, what geo restrictions or geo information they are. We can add comments, review comments. So it's pretty easy to work with files, and we can keep this preview mode open, and we can flick between different files, and depending on what the file is, we'll get an ability to interact with it, get a preview. It's a nice collaboration view on top of the actual object storage itself. Of course, we don't have to interact with the data just through the web. We can use the integrated desktop tools. So if we were to go back to our Storage Made Easy drive where we just dropped these files, and we double-clicked on the Word document, for example, then we would go back to the object storage, we would pull that document down, and it would open directly in Word. And if we made a change and saved that file, then it would be saved back directly to the object storage. So the end user would really be the no wiser. They could interact with the data directly from the desktop, just as they would with their home filer drives. So it really does deliver the object storage directly into the end user. Also, of course, all of the interactions from the desktop or the mobile or the web, of course, they're all securely audited and logged. The other things that users will want to do is to securely share files. And to be able to do that, you can do that using URLs, or the system can deliver an email directly to the user. One of the things you can do is to set policies for end users around how they're able to share files. You can decide whether a certain file expires after a time period. You can limit the download perhaps to 1, so that if somebody forwards the email, then the link that's generated can't be used again. And you can also set a password so that the end user will need the password to be able to access the link. You can actually turn off file sharing altogether for end users if you wish to, or you can make it very, very locked down. So it's entirely up to the IT admin as to how they want this to work. But it does make sharing of links more secure than just allowing users to share files. It can also track the link, it can record the IP address, you can set passwords, you can make sure that the link gets into the hands of the person it's meant to and not into any other hands. The other thing we can do is we can share folders for external collaboration, or to enable people to drop some files into a folder with very limited permissions. So to be able to do something like that, if we go to, for example, the marketing folder and we click to share the folder, we can share this folder by URL. We can again set the options about when it can be set to expire. So maybe we're just going to let it be 1 day. And then we can choose to set it as a drop folder. This means that people can actually put files into it. They don't need to log in, they don't need to have an account, but they will need a password. So if we set a password, also you'll notice an option to hide files. That means if the folder already has files in it, don't show them to the user who's going to drop some more files in it. You can do this with existing folders, or you can do this with new folders. Once we generate the link is available. Here we can copy it, and then actually what an end user would see is a password. Once they enter the password, they'd be able to browse the folder and then add some files to it. In our case, we enabled them to see the files that were already in the folder, but of course we didn't need to. Of course, most users will spend most of their time inside of their email accounts when they're sharing files. And the Storage Made Easy tool suite integrates directly into best-of-breed emails, such as, for example, Outlook, which is what I'm in right now, and also MacMail. And you get some new buttons inside of your emails when you click New Email. And if you click the Share from Cloud, then we get the same view as we got when we were in the Drive or in the web view. And we can simply go inside of our shared folders and we can choose to share a file. And when we share a file, we get the same options that we got previously. We can generate a short link directly inside of an email. So it's very consistent in terms of what the user experiences. And all of this is audited and available directly from that audit view that we saw earlier. The mail integration also extends to MacMail. Here we see the same view. We can go straight into our Softlayer view, and again we can choose to share files directly. We of course see exactly the same type of file share policies that we saw before. In this case, no policies being preset, so that enables me to decide how I want this file to be shared. And the file is entered directly into Mail. SME is actually one of the few tools that integrates the share links directly in this way, directly into MacMail. These types of integrations are of course again all aimed at delivering the last mile of object storage directly to the end user and providing this consumer type experience but based on corporate enterprise data. The solution itself is designed with mobility in mind. In fact, the actual web interface will change depending on what type of device it's viewed on, and can be viewed on phones, or indeed it can be viewed on tablets, etc. However, SME also comes with mobile applications for iPad, iOS, iPhone, Android, Windows Phone, and also BlackBerry. And the application types themselves are quite rich. So for example, on the iPad, one of the things we can do is launch SME, and when we're in, we get the same view that we got from the web. And indeed, pretty much from a user perspective, everything is the same. We can see we've got a comment on one of the files that we made a comment on earlier, and we've got an ability to go and view the file if we wish to, or indeed, we can share it, and you'll be not surprised to see that the sharing options are pretty much the same sharing options that we've seen in the other apps, tools, and web interface. The other thing about this particular medium is that you can do some nice things, like, for example, you can set up a folder sync. So you can sync down Softlayer files for on-the-move use directly on your iPad or your Android, both on the tablets and on the phone. And there are other options to do indeed with media, with memos, with voice memos, etc., all of which would end up being stored directly on Softlayer. So it's a very nice device to be able to work on the move. Also, what I can show you in this iPad mirroring is how it integrates with Microsoft Word. So if we launch Microsoft Office, in this case Microsoft Word, and we go to the More in the Provider page, because SME is implemented as a document provider, we can actually go directly into our backend Softlayer Object Storage, and we can start to access our files. Now that's pretty great, because we don't even have to go through SME. We're in a totally third-party app, and we're accessing the documents that are stored on the backend object storage. And even better, every access is being audited and logged. And you can see here on the document, the change that we made earlier on the desktop version of Word is now available through the Microsoft Office version of Word. So that's again, it's back to this, the ability to extend this idea of a corporate Dropbox or a consumer file share and sync type approach into the enterprise, so that users totally buy into its use, but IT has a total end-to-end security pathway of everything that's being used. One of the other things that I should point out is that the SME product works very well with third-party enterprise apps. So, for example, MDM solutions that might be already implemented in the enterprise, Storage Made Easy plays quite well with those. In fact, it's got some default integrations with things such as Mobile Iron, in which it can be used side by side. So you get the benefits of all the audit login and this holistic security blanket that wraps itself around corporate data, and you also get the benefits of those types of MDM tools that very much that containerize applications. I mentioned earlier that we were logged in as the IT admin. The IT admin, rather than just seeing the file manager, which is what users see, also has some additional options. All of these options that are marked organization. We looked at one of these earlier with regards to audit logs, but what I'd like to do is take a quick look at the options. These are all the options that the IT admin has with regards to changing things on the system. And they're organized into very distinct sections. The first one of which is user governance, which means that you can decide here what governance settings that you want to set for end users. The next is the file sharing policy. I mentioned earlier that you can preset file sharing policies, so you could make it a requirement that a password is required for shared links, or that indeed shared links must expire, for example, in 1 day. You might always limit the number of downloads, etc. Then we have the security options. The security options allow you to do things like force strong passwords, turn on two-factor authentication, only allow authentication from certain IP addresses. Encryption, the IT admin can make sure that all of the files that are encrypted at rest with an encryption key set that is kept within the SME solution. The solution also supports versioning and trash. Here you control the versioning and trash options. How many versions are allowed? When do they get reaped? Is trash allowed? How does that work? Etc. And then there are some more sections down here relating to things to do with search. One of the things I haven't talked about is that the whole solution becomes integrated with content search, which allows you to search the actual contents of files which are indexed on upload. The actual IT admin has a very granular ability as well to control what the users see. If they want the users to see the bare minimum, they can turn on the simplify user view, which means that the user will get the file manager and not much else. And the IT admin also controls things like notifications and has some control over branding. You can see here that I chose to brand this, with IBM Cloud for the IBM demo. And indeed, that homepage widget that you saw, this is actually where it was set. One last thing I'd like to talk about now is ransomware. Ransomware, many people will now know of, and they'll have read some things in the press, and if they've really been unlucky, they'll have been subject to it. Ransomware is one of these things that everyone talks about, but when it actually happens to you, it's a real problem. So given the fact that we're working with drives and we're working with data and we're integrating the desktop, how do we protect against ransomware? Ransomware works by infecting files, locking them, and then the ransomers issue a demand to get the files unlocked. So one of the ways that you can protect against this is to make sure that you have archived or backup copies of the file structures. And I'm going to show you how you can do that with SME. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to go back into the dashboard. And from the dashboard, I'm going to add a backup for my Softlayer. It's going to be actually another Softlayer account, except this time rather than being in London, I'm going to choose Amsterdam. And we go through a very similar set of details before. These are backup for Softlayer files. I'm going to add the authentication endpoint. This time the behavior is slightly different in that it's asking me where do I want to save my backup files. So I'm going to call this SME archive for IBM demo. Now at the point that I hit continue this time, what's going to happen is going to be a little different from before. What it's going to do is it's going to create a task to move or copy rather all of the files from the primary provider, which in this case is my Softlayer in London, and it's going to copy those back to my archive provider. And therein it will take any new files and it will also copy them across to the archive provider, giving me an exact mirror copy of what I've got in my London container. Now, this is also applicable to things other than obviously Softlayer. If you had a Windows file server, which are often prone to be hit by ransomware, you could set that up as a CIFS provider in our system. And you could set Softlayer as the archive or backup provider for that. And then all of those files, would have a replica copy on Softlayer. So in the event that you ever got hit with a ransomware demand or for any reason were targeted, then you know that you would always have a copy that you could get back. One of the things we can do now is we can go back into the file manager and we can take a look at the tasks view. And what we should see is some tasks that have been done with regards to syncing Softlayer, to the archive cloud. And we can see that it's processed the files and that's been completed. From now on, every time we upload a new file, as normal to our London, our primary storage, it will automatically be copied across to what's in the Amsterdam container. So the last thing I'd like to do before I end the demo is go back to our Softlayer view and take another look at the direct view of the storage. So we're now in London, and here we've got our folders. We see we've got another one called .trash. I think I talked to you earlier about the options where you can decide what you want to do with trash. In my particular case, trash is on, so that any files deleted go into .trash before I decide to empty them. If we check inside of things like HR, we'll see the files that we already know are there from our web view. So London is as expected. If we go back to our cluster and we now take a look at Amsterdam, what we should see is a replica view of what we have in London. Here is the archive IBM demo that we created. We should see a similar structure to what we had in London. So again, here are the files that were automatically moved across from the London container. So they were copied. They're an exact replica. They're untouchable from the point of view of a ransomware attack because they're totally archived. They're not exposed in any way. And inside of the actual SME solution, in the event that such an attack happened, we can basically flip this around so you get back access to all of the files. So it's a very good solution for things like ransomware. It's a very good solution for something like eArchive. One last thing I'd like to point out is, as you will see, all of the files that you're seeing here are exactly as you uploaded them. We haven't turned them into any acronyms or any hieroglyphics. I point that out because there are quite a few solutions out there that when they do the file upload, they tamper with the file names and they put metadata into them, and you can no longer understand them. And that locks you into that solution. Therein, if you want to really understand your file structures, you need that solution to be able to decipher them. SME is meant to be an open solution, so that if you took SME out the mix, you'd easily be able to understand the file structures that you've got inside of your Softlayer. So it's not proprietary in that sense, it's totally open. And we keep all of our metadata in a database, not actually inside of the files itself or inside of the file names itself. So that was really a whistle-stop tour of the SME solution. We covered quite a bit, but there was a lot we didn't cover. We didn't cover Active Directory or LDAP integration. We didn't cover protocol gateways. There was quite a lot that we ended up missing out. 20 minutes is all we had. We packed quite a lot into that. Hopefully it was useful, and now we'll jump back to the slides.